And this particular attraction and curiosity about the idea of India takes us to a fund of goodwill that India enjoys all over the world. Now, when we talk about soft power, this goodwill has to be taken to a different level and converted into a kind of understanding about the idea of India. The moment world starts understanding the idea of India, I believe our objective of soft power could be very easily achieved.
India, the land of wonders. A land where there was wisdom when the rest of the world was learning the ropes of civilization. Amidst the malice of the Dark Ages, India gave the world a glimmer of hope. In the unstable times of violence and turmoil, a revolutionary principle was born in India. Ahimsa Paramo Dharma. Non-violence is the highest virtue. The idea of non-violence, which is still relevant and a core philosophy of this rapidly growing nation. Gandhiji's values and philosophy of ahimsa has inspired generations. India believes in making the world a beautiful place where everyone is part of one big family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, ancient Indian philosophy that considers the entire population as one giant family. A family that prospers with each other without any conflict or aggression. In today's age of seamless geographical boundaries and international partnerships, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam seems like the necessity of the future. India banks on its cultural strength and power that emphasizes on moral high ground. Sarvajan Hidai, Sarvajan Sukhai, for everyone's wellness, for everyone's happiness. With a harmonious ideology at the core, India believes in winning the hearts and admiration of the whole world. Since its independence struggle, India has shown the world that non-violence and all-inclusiveness along with spiritualism, yoga, Bollywood films, classical dances, and the ever-popular lip-smacking cuisines are Indian inherent strength. And attract the world to this wonderful, hospitable country and its warm people. A nation that prides itself on its heritage. India is a shining example of how unity, harmony, and oneness combined with culture can conquer the whole world. Proud of its past, India is moving forward into the future. In a rapidly changing technological landscape, India has emerged as a technological giant. With its booming information technology, diaspora spread all around the globe. India dominated the world in intellectual prowess. From tech titans to humble startup ventures, India is making her presence felt all over the global IT scene. Looking at a future that is highly progressive and all-inclusive, India draws strength from its ancient civilization and rich history. Learning several lessons in morality and humility, India believes in leading by example. A land where modern technology and progress work alongside with old traditions and culture, India is a land of wonders indeed. where the past seamlessly exists with the present and becomes a part of the future. Today, hand in hand with its ancient civilization and modern values, India is a landscape of diversity, tolerance, and inclusiveness. Using its public goods such as yoga and Ayurveda, India has spawned some of the world's greatest religions, art, and literature. Being the biggest and most vibrant democracy in the world, it is a melting pot of culture and traditions that promotes the subliminal message of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Ayanijaha Parobeti Ganana Laghu Chetasam Udar Charitana tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is mine, that is theirs. Only narrow-minded believe in this divide. Wise, however, believe for the whole world as one family.
Concept of soft power is not very old. It has been just about maybe a couple of decades that the world started discussing about soft power. And in the Indian context, I believe there are some features which are very unique to the idea of India of soft power. And what are these features? I believe basically in the Indian context, India's soft power starts with a whole lot of attraction towards the idea of India, which we experience in every nook and corner of the world. And this particular attraction and curiosity about the idea of India takes us to a fund of goodwill that India enjoys all over the world. Now, when we talk about soft power, this goodwill has to be taken to a different level and converted into a kind of understanding about the idea of India. The moment world starts understanding the idea of India, I believe our objective of soft power could be very easily achieved.
India, the land of wonders. A land where there was wisdom when the rest of the world was learning the ropes of civilization. Amidst the malice of the Dark Ages, India gave the world a glimmer of hope. In the unstable times of violence and turmoil, a revolutionary principle was born in India. Ahimsa Parmo Dharma. Non-violence is the highest virtue. The idea of non-violence, which is still relevant and a core philosophy of this rapidly growing nation. Gandhiji's values and philosophy of ahimsa has inspired generations. India believes in making the world a beautiful place where everyone is part of one big family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, ancient Indian philosophy that considers the entire population as one giant family. A family that prospers with each other without any conflict or aggression. In today's age of seamless geographical boundaries and international partnerships, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam seems like the necessity of the future. India banks on its cultural strength and power that emphasizes on moral high ground. Sarvajan Hidai, Sarvajan Sukhai, for everyone's wellness, for everyone's happiness. With a harmonious ideology at the core, India believes in winning the hearts and admiration of the whole world. Since its independence struggle, India has shown the world that non-violence and all-inclusiveness along with spiritualism, yoga, Bollywood films, classical dances, and the ever-popular lip-smacking cuisines are Indian inherent strength and attract the world to this wonderful, hospitable country and its warm people. A nation that prides itself on its heritage. India is a shining example of how unity, harmony, and oneness combined with culture can conquer the whole world. Proud of its past, India is moving forward into the future. In a rapidly changing technological landscape, India has emerged as a technological giant. With its booming information technology, diaspora spread all around the globe. India dominated the world in intellectual prowess. From tech titans to humble startup ventures, India's making her presence felt all over the global IT scene. Looking at a future that is highly progressive and all-inclusive, India draws strength from its ancient civilization and rich history. Learning several lessons in morality and humility, India believes in leading by example. A land where modern technology and progress work alongside with old traditions and culture. India is a land of wonders indeed, where the past seamlessly exists with the present and becomes a part of the future. Today, hand in hand with its ancient civilization and modern values, India is a landscape of diversity, tolerance, and inclusiveness. Using its public goods such as yoga and Ayurveda, India has spawned some of the world's greatest religions, art, and literature. Being the biggest and most vibrant democracy in the world, it is a melting pot of culture and traditions that promotes the subliminal message of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Ainijah Parobeti Ganana Laghu Chetasam Udar Charitana tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is mine, that is theirs. Only narrow-minded believe in this divide. Wise, however, believe for the whole world as one family.
Concept of soft power is not very old. It has been just about maybe a couple of decades that the world started discussing about soft power. And in the Indian context, I believe there are some features which are very unique to the idea of India of soft power. And what are these features? I believe basically in the Indian context, India's soft power starts with a whole lot of attraction towards the idea of India, which we experience in every nook and corner of the world. And this particular attraction and curiosity about the idea of India takes us to a fund of goodwill that India enjoys all over the world. Now, when we talk about soft power, this goodwill has to be taken to a different level and converted into a kind of understanding about the idea of India. The moment world starts understanding the idea of India, I believe our objective of soft power could be very easily achieved.
India, the land of wonders. A land where there was wisdom when the rest of the world was learning the ropes of civilization. Amidst the malice of the Dark Ages, India gave the world a glimmer of hope. In the unstable times of violence and turmoil, a revolutionary principle was born in India. Ahimsa Parmo Dharma, non-violence is the highest virtue. The idea of non-violence, which is still relevant and a core philosophy of this rapidly growing nation. Gandhiji's values and philosophy of ahimsa has inspired generations. India believes in making the world a beautiful place where everyone is part of one big family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, ancient Indian philosophy that considers the entire population as one giant family. A family that prospers with each other without any conflict or aggression. In today's age of seamless geographical boundaries and international partnerships, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam seems like the necessity of the future. India banks on its cultural strength and power that emphasizes on moral high ground. Sarvajan Hidai, Sarvajan Sukhai, for everyone's wellness, for everyone's happiness. With a harmonious ideology at the core, India believes in winning the hearts and admiration of the whole world. Since its independence struggle, India has shown the world that non-violence and all-inclusiveness along with spiritualism, yoga, Bollywood films, classical dances, and the ever-popular lip-smacking cuisines are Indian inherent strength. And attract the world to this wonderful, hospitable country and its warm people. A nation that prides itself on its heritage. India is a shining example of how unity, harmony, and oneness combined with culture can conquer the whole world. Proud of its past, India is moving forward into the future. In a rapidly changing technological landscape, India has emerged as a technological giant. With its booming information technology, diaspora spread all around the globe. India dominated the world in intellectual prowess. From tech titans to humble startup ventures, India is making her presence felt all over the global IT scene. Looking at a future that is highly progressive and all-inclusive, India draws strength from its ancient civilization and rich history. Learning several lessons in morality and humility, India believes in leading by example. A land where modern technology and progress work alongside with old traditions and culture, India is a land of wonders indeed, where the past seamlessly exists with the present and becomes a part of the future. Today, hand in hand with its ancient civilization and modern values, India is a landscape of diversity, tolerance, and inclusiveness. Using its public goods such as yoga and Ayurveda, India has spawned some of the world's greatest religions, art, and literature. Being the biggest and most vibrant democracy in the world, it is a melting pot of culture and traditions that promotes the subliminal message of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Ainija Paroveti Ganana Laghu Chetasam Udar Charitana tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is mine, that is theirs. Only narrow-minded believe in this divide. Wise, however, believe for the whole world as one family.
Concept of soft power is not very old. It has been just about maybe a couple of decades that the world started discussing about soft power. And in the Indian context, I believe there are some features which are very unique to the idea of India of soft power. And what are these features? I believe basically in the Indian context, India's soft power starts with a whole lot of attraction towards the idea of India, which we experience in every nook and corner of the world. And this particular attraction and curiosity about the idea of India takes us to a fund of goodwill that India enjoys all over the world. Now, when we talk about soft power, this goodwill has to be taken to a different level and converted into a kind of understanding about the idea of India. The moment world starts understanding the idea of India, I believe our objective of soft power could be very easily achieved.
India, the land of wonders. A land where there was wisdom when the rest of the world was learning the ropes of civilization. Amidst the malice of the Dark Ages, India gave the world a glimmer of hope. In the unstable times of violence and turmoil, a revolutionary principle was born in India. Ahimsa Parmo Dharma. Non-violence is the highest virtue. The idea of non-violence, which is still relevant and a core philosophy of this rapidly growing nation. Gandhiji's values and philosophy of ahimsa has inspired generations. India believes in making the world a beautiful place where everyone is part of one big family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, ancient Indian philosophy that considers the entire population as one giant family. A family that prospers with each other without any conflict or aggression. In today's age of seamless geographical boundaries and international partnerships, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam seems like the necessity of the future. India banks on its cultural strength and power that emphasizes on moral high ground. Sarvajan Hidai, Sarvajan Sukhai, for everyone's wellness, for everyone's happiness. With a harmonious ideology at the core, India believes in winning the hearts and admiration of the whole world. Since its independence struggle, India has shown the world that non-violence and all-inclusiveness along with spiritualism, yoga, Bollywood films, classical dances, and the ever-popular lip-smacking cuisines are Indian inherent strength. And attract the world to this wonderful, hospitable country and its warm people. A nation that prides itself on its heritage. India is a shining example of how unity, harmony, and oneness combined with culture can conquer the whole world. Proud of its past, India is moving forward into the future. In a rapidly changing technological landscape, India has emerged as a technological giant. With its booming information technology, diaspora spread all around the globe. India dominated the world in intellectual prowess. From tech titans to humble startup ventures, India's making her presence felt all over the global IT scene. Political landscape. Looking at a future that is highly progressive and all inclusive, India draws strength from its ancient civilization and rich history. Learning several lessons in morality and humility, India believes in leading by example. A land where modern technology and progress work alongside.
Good afternoon, Sharat ji.
Shall we begin?
Yes, sir, we can begin, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, sir. Yes, sir, we can begin now.
Hello. Hello.
Sir, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Hello.
We can hear you.
We can hear you very well.
We can hear. Professor Deshpande.
Hello. Hello, Professor Deshpande.
Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Sir, you are audible.
Professor Deshpande, we can hear you very well.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
आपके द्वारा डायल किया गया नंबर नेटवर्क कवरेज क्षेत्र से बाहर
Hello. Welcome, friends. I am not able to get the voice of anybody from ICCR host, from Professor Zamkhedkar, Professor Deepak Kannal, or Nandita ji. I am not getting anybody's voice.
You are audible to us.
So, is there something wrong from that side? If my voice is reaching you, then I can begin.
So the system is fine from
I'm not getting your voice.
You are very well audible.
I'm not getting your voice. Please
Can you
see
hear
in your
me?
chat
We
box.
can hear you very well. We can hear you very
Anyway,
well.
my computer person is coming, and yes, I can see that, sir, you need to check your. Okay. Yes, 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 yes. Good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, friends, I'm sorry. I mean, I just forgot to put this voice thing properly. I think now we can begin, and our second day webinar, or the second day of this webinar, I welcome everybody, all our viewers who are viewing this program, all our viewers viewing from Facebook, chat, and YouTube channels. And I'm told that yesterday a large number of people watched this program. So I'm sure today also we are having a large number of viewership, and I think we will go. To begin with, I will just very briefly recapitulate of what we did yesterday, because some viewers might not have been present yesterday. So just for their benefit, I am very quickly putting across certain very important points that emerged in yesterday's presentations. Yesterday, we had two excellent presentations. One on the emergence of Indology within the religious and colonial frameworks of European thinking, about which not much is known to most Indologists in India. In this regard, an important observation made by Dr. Bakchi, that Indology as a discipline of thought about Indian civilization and culture was not a result of any conversation with Indian pundits or historians or all those who mattered to know something about India's heritage and India's past. But Indology was a result of many diverse forces in Europe about which most Indians are not even aware of. While acknowledging the pioneering works of some of the early Indologists, it is equally necessary to have knowledge of this driving forces of European Indologists when they constitute India's past and Indian traditions in a certain manner. In this connection, Professor Michel Danino, our other speaker, pointed out some famous and hegemonic stereotypes which are at work while understanding Indian civilization. These pertain to the interpretation of the Rig Veda, the way the Buddhists and the Jains departed from the Vedic orthodoxy, and interpretation of caste in Indian society. So these stereotypes have been very dominant all these ages. These and other stereotypes have presented the living Indian tradition as a dead tradition. Secondly, the politics in the change in nomenclatures, replacing the term India or Indian studies by South Asian studies, also needs to be noted carefully, and its implications must be known very clearly. And lastly, the nature of academic setup and the institutional framework in which Indology as an academic discipline is functioning today, and what needs to be done if the new Indology is to emerge, which will be free from the colonial mindset. I think these were the points that were discussed in details. Today, now we turn on to our today's deliberations. Today we have amongst us two renowned scholars amongst us, namely Professor Arvind Zamkhedkar. Hello, Professor Zamkhedkar, and Dr. Nandita Krishna from Chennai. Where is she? Namaste, Nandita ji. I can see you. Acha, Joydeep is also there. So nice to see him. Professor Zamkhedkar will be the first speaker this afternoon. Professor Zamkhedkar is a well-known historian, archaeologist in India today. He is currently the chairman of Indian Council for Historical Research. He was also the director of the state department of director of the archaeology and museums of government of Maharashtra, and he is associated with Asiatic Society of Mumbai, and he is presently the chancellor of Deccan College Pune, which is deemed to be university. And besides these important positions which he has occupied, he is known amongst the archaeologists in India and also the historians in India as an absolutely forthright and first-rate historian and archaeologist. Today, he is going to speak on a very fascinating topic, namely the study of Sanskrit sources and the medieval history of India. What he says is that while studying the medieval history of India, hardly any sources in Sanskrit are used, whereas for the latter medieval period, the sources used are mostly in Persian and in the form of farmans, inscriptions, royal accounts maintained by the court, accounts of foreign travelers, and so on and so forth, which depicts the social political aspects of later medieval period. In the case of the earlier part of the medieval period, it has become a fashion to brand the literature in Sanskrit and other Indian languages as feudal poetry, not reflecting socio-political aspects of life of the medieval society. I think this is a very important observation that the gap between the presentation of history through farmans and such documents, so to say, and looking at the Sanskrit and other Indian languages as if they are full of only poetry or poetical accounts or thereby mythical accounts and not the factual historical accounts. So I think with this we can go into what Professor Zamkhedkar is going to tell us. So I invite Professor Zamkhedkar to give his presentation. Professor Zamkhedkar.
Can you guide me in how to share the presentation?
Hello.
Hello. Can Archana or Ankita was going to tell me how to guide, how to give the presentation, share the presentation with you all. Is Archana listening to me?
Sir, there's a share icon on top. If you can find towards the file, edit and share. So you can share from there. Try and click. You're on the laptop, sir?
Share, yes.
Yes, sir.
There.
Just click on that, sir.
Share the screen.
Yes, sir.
Should I say Webex Meet?
No.
No, screen broadcast.
Can you do that?
Start broadcast.
Hello. Starting to share the content, yes.
But I don't know how to. Why the screen sharing has ended? See?
Sir, we are trying to share it for you. We are trying to share your PPT with you, sir.
Acha, you will do that?
We are trying to do that, sir. Ankita, can you please help, sir?
Yes, there. Yeah. Yes. 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 Now I can see the first slide.
Yes.
So you can keep them guiding so that we can move the slides ahead. Whichever slide you want, sir.
Professor.
Yes. Just a moment. What I was trying to say, and as told by uh, Professor Deshpande, see, there is a famous work by Professor D.D. Kosambi, and that is an anthology of poems, you can say, that is Subhashita Ratna Kosha by Vidyakara of 7th, 8th century AD. There, he has given a very big introduction to that particular work, and in that he has come to the conclusion that after the Gupta period, the the poetry, Sanskrit poetry, has become feudal. It is worse than the ballads and works like Decameron and others in the medieval Europe. And the poet is, meaning he goes on describing many times the wars, battles, and other things. Probably he has hardly not seen even a weapon, not to mention about the battle. And therefore he said that this poet is in something like a cocoon of himself, for himself, and he doesn't know anything outside the world. He is worried only about his feudal patron, and he is happy with that. And therefore, all this poetry is feudal, and what it reflects, at the most, it reflects, you can say, at the most, uh, the feuds which are there between different sects, then the uh, the exploitation of the artist which is there, and therefore the art also becoming something like very very mechanical type of art, because the artist is depending on the dole money which has been given, or you can say he's not even paid in kind. He's paid in kind but not never in cash, and therefore the whole situation, it is reflected uh, in the Sanskrit poetry is like that, and therefore it is of no use for any scholar to reconstruct the past. I started my presentation in a slightly different way, saying that, well, when Bhaudaji Lad in 19th century started his work, he found out that the manuscripts were useful. And I am going to give only one example, and that is how he wrote an article, brief note on the age and authenticity of Aryabhatta, Varamira, Brahmagupta, Bhattotpala, and Bhaskaracharya in the Journal of the Royal Asiatic Society of London. The European scholars, meaning just to explain how many times the European scholars they approach the subject, they thought that Aryabhatta, they didn't know about the chronology itself. They said that there are two Aryabhattas, and the Aryabhatta which we find in Kali age 4432, his date is something like in 14th century, and the Aryabhatta Siddhanta which is there, they say he is an imitator and therefore he must be a later person. Bhaudaji Lad, with the help of the manuscripts and also the tradition which was there within the manuscripts itself, a close study of their colophons and the internal matter, he solved the problem very successfully and set up the chronology of the astronomers, which was very important because they were saying that most of these astronomers, uh, as they have the same names, their chronology is not very clear. And I picked up this example to show that even the study of manuscripts can give you an inner, you can say, insight into the understanding which the European scholars failed to do. They didn't have the sources, of course, but they didn't care also for it. They used their own methodology and uh, and were saying that, well, the scene in astronomical chronology of India, uh, meaning the writers on astronomy, it was not at all sound. And Bauda Gilad, with the help of, he was not a great scholar in the sense. Many times he used to take the help of pandits, but at the same time, with his close study of the manuscripts itself, he had made a good collection of the manuscripts, and with the help of that, he set up the chronology very well. Can we go to the next? Can we?
We have changed the slide, sir. We are on the next slide now.
Will you please go ahead? I don't know how to change it. Shall I do? Can I do it or you are doing it?
Hello.
There was another way Bauda Gilad did it, and with the help of, I'm trying to tell that as they did not know, at the same point which has been raised up by Professor Bakshi, that they did not know the tradition in India, how to understand, because our chronology was mainly for the religious acharyas and so many other things. So Jainas had their own Guruvavalis, and incidentally they mentioned who the kings were contemporary to them. So with the help of that, he first of all made clear the positions of the Shaka era and the Vikrama era. And with the help of the Guruvavalis, which followed the Vikrama era, he established a very good chronology of history, early historical period. Similarly, with the help of the Shaka era, because Shaka era, as we should know, Shaka era is more popular in the south. All over the Southeast Asia, including even, you can say, Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka, the Shaka era is followed. So unless you know, so Buddhists were following the Shaka era, whereas in North India and the Jainas were following the Vikrama era. So unless you know these basic things, naturally for the European scholars, the chronology of India was very difficult to understand, and therefore they said that the chronology of India is something like various pins which are set on a table and they are to be fixed from time to time. Only relative chronology there can be there. There cannot be any absolute chronology. We'll go to our next now, because this was enough to show what was the attitude of the European scholars. There is another thing which I gave in the introduction, that a medieval text, they are useless. They are of no use in the reconstruction of the history. But if we look the Puranas, for example, the Puranas are set aside and they say they are of no use, because we also many times casually say that Puranatli Vangi Puranatas Raudya. That means the examples of or the illustrations which have been given in the Puranas, they are useful only to that extent only. They are not useful to understand our own things, our own life. This was the attitude which was there in the transitional period, that is in the colonial period of our own people, and of course the scholars from Europe. Exceptions are there, as pointed out earlier also, that Pargitar, for example, he, with the help of the dynasties in the Khalej, he reconstructed the whole thing. But then after Pargitar, probably it is only some Indian scholars like Hazra and others who found and tried to understand the medieval texts, especially the Puranas. The Puranas are there. Puranas are usually taken to be ending with the Gupta period. They are finalized by 5th, 6th century AD. Then there are Upapuranas, which are dated from 650 to 850 AD. And then come the later Mahatmyas, which come to the later medieval period. There is a very important point which has been made by Professor Hazra, who has studied the Upapuranas. He says that what is the purpose of these Puranas? These Puranas were probably reconstructed or composed for the sake of the Shaiva Smartas, then Brahma Smartas, and the Vaishnava Smartas. In other words, we try to understand Hinduism only the Vedic tradition. Then there is another tradition which is of the Agamas, which has been very strong in the south. It has got its own purpose. I won't go into the detail how the Agama tradition was very powerful and it was useful in the assimilation of the population which was there in South India, wherein the Vedic tradition and the Buddhist and Jain traditions were introduced. I won't go into that, but I will simply restrict myself only to two texts. That is, you can say Shivalaya Mahatmya, which is connected with one of the Jyotirlingas, five Jyotirlingas which are there in Maharashtra. Shivalaya Mahatmya, that is the Shivalaya or the Jyotirlinga at Verror, is one of the important places. And there are so many, you can say, works going on. What I wanted to make a sort of a contrast was that, well, now when you go to Ellora, we always see the World Heritage Site. All those caves, whether they are Buddhist, Jain, or Shaiva or Vaishnava caves, all the five agamas are in a way represented according to me there, but they are deserted now. There are no inscriptions to understand those things except one or two inscriptions which are there, and the tradition is totally lost. But they have that glory of the great, you can say, World Heritage title is there, and therefore people visit those monuments. There are hardly any people, and scholars, I would especially say, that they visit the Shivalaya or the Jyotirlinga which is there, which was reconstructed by Ahilyabai in 18th century. So they say, no, it is a late monument, what is there to see in it? But if we look into the whole tradition, whether it is literary or otherwise, then we realize that here is a tradition. Now, as I said, I have already edited one text in Marathi, which was composed in 19th century by one Raghava Krishna Shukla. But when I try to understand this particular tradition, we can say that it starts from Shiva Purana. All the Jyotirlingas are described in the Rudrakoti Samhita of the Shiva Purana. And there are two chapters practically to each of the Jyotirlingas to describe how it emerged. The story is usually that for the sake of the devotee, the Lord appears before him because of his devotion and graces him with his presence and assures him, you can say, liberation. That is how all the Jyotirlingas are described. But when I try to understand, we'll find that there are at least four Verul Mahatmyas in Marathi itself of different period. There is one in between, which is of 17th, 18th century, wherein was a contemporary Hanumanagiri. He retains one Sanskrit, you can say, text, and on that there is a commentary of 3,000 or 4,000 stanzas. There are two Samhitas which are there, the Sahyadri Khanda Samhitas, which are not part of the critical edition of the Padma Purana or the Skanda Purana, but they have got a Shivalaya Mahatmya. And they give the stories. So we'll find that right from something like after the end of 6th century, if we take that to be the period of the completion of the Puranas, the Jyotirlinga monuments, they start coming up only after 10th, 11th century AD. We'll find that in Padma Purana there is one Samhita. There is Skanda Purana, in which Sahyadri Khanda there is a Shivalaya Mahatmya, and 4 or 5 Shivalaya Mahatmyas are there in Marathi. So there is a continuous tradition. Now, if we study these texts, we can go further. Will you please go further, Archana? I have just shown, we can even skip over. These are the main monuments which are there.
Skip.
They show us the tradition of the Agama, you can say Shaiva Agamas. We know that the Pashupata cult was very much there, and people have done a
Yeah.
lot of
Okay.
work.
Skip.
Collins, there is a scholar who has worked on uh, uh, these monuments of the Pashupata type monuments. Those are at Elephanta, then at Ellora, cave number 21, cave number 16, cave number 22, and cave number
Ahead.
29. So all these are Pashupata monuments, and they give a particular type of philosophy. And more elaborate work has
हो
been
गया वाला.
done after Stella Kranrish by Devangana Desai, but no one knows about the Jyotirlinga at Krishneshwara, and therefore they thought that one of the caves might be a
Next.
Jyotirlinga. Scholars have done up to something like 30 or 40 years, but if we carefully study this particular text, then we'll find that here I have given a complete list of 8 versions which are there of the tradition, right from something like 5th, 6th century AD to about 20th century AD. So there is a continued tradition. And if we closely study them, we'll find that the Tirtha is getting expanded more and more. It was definitely destroyed. And that is why Ahilyabai had to reconstruct it in 18th century. But the tradition does not stop. As I told you, the literary tradition continues right from 5th, 6th century up to something like 20th century. And if we go further, we'll find that there are monuments which are coming up around this particular. So then it forms, earlier it was only a holy place near the fall of water which is there between cave number 27 and 29. There is a big waterfall, and that was known as Shivalaya. It was a sacred pond in which probably the shrine was there. It is no more there now. But now, in spite of these things, there are no so many holy places which are coming around that particular place, and it is preserved in, you can say, popular memory. Shall we go to the next slide? Now this is the latest one. Vinayak Bhatt Topre in 1922, he wrote his last, you can say, Brahma Sarovara or Shivalaya Mahatmya. So the tradition continues. There is a complete tradition which is very much, and today, thousands of people today, that is devotees, pilgrims, they come and visit the monument created by Ahilyabai. Next one. This is a beautiful monument created by Ahilyabai in 18th century. And now, naturally, the location of this Jyotirlinga has been shifted. It was in a lake in the river itself, but now it has been shifted and brought to the bank. Similarly, the Shivalaya itself, which has been described in the Padma Samhita as also in the earlier text of Shiva Purana, there are 8 tirthas which are on the 4 corners. That new concept of circuit of the tirthas which comes, that the center is the you can say uh, uh, the Jyotirlinga itself, but there are 8 great places in India like Prayag, or for that matter, you can say Ganga Sagar Sangam, and those are taken to be making the holy circuit of this particular sacred holy place. Next one. This is an Amrutavapi. There is a reference that once Parvati was feeling very thirsty, and therefore Rudra with his parachute, he hit the ground, and there was a water spring which was there. Now it has been preserved in the form of a step well by the side of the main temple. Next one. Here is the inscription of 1691, Shake 1691, that is 1769, by Ahilyabai. And she reconstructed the whole, that Shivalaya complex, that is the pond, which was a sacred pond. And she found probably a spring which was there nearby. And around that she constructed. And all those holy tirthas which have been described in the Padma Samhita, they have been constructed here. Next one. Next one. Here is the general map, of course, meaning if somebody. Now, there are so many stories which are coming up, and therefore there is a place for Girija Bhavani also. Because the whole story goes that once Parvati was very much angry with Shiva, and therefore she left him but she came to this place and practiced penance. And then there are so many stories of the Ela king, then the Ela river, Ela Ganga as she is called, and then the construction of cave number 16, which is called Mankeshwar after the queen of Ela. So all these stories, they are come. And unless we understand these stories, even the rocket monuments, which are otherwise well known, they cannot be understood properly. So a study of these is very important. Next one. This is the Girija Bhavani on Mahishmar on the plateau above the caves. There is a temple now of Girija Bhavani because she has come in exile and she is practicing penance here. Next one. This is, of course, obviously a shrine of 17th or 18th century. Now, there are so many legends here. Parvati leaving Kailash and coming to Maheshmar. We call it Maheshmar, but actual name is Maheshamala. The legend of Ela King, who is the son born in the Soma Vansha, he is there. He is an androgen. Then he is the progenitor of the Soma lunar Kshatriyas. So he is supposed to have come here. He is actually one of the ancestors of the Pandavas. Then he is cursed with white leprosy. Is one of the recurring themes in the medieval literature that well leprosy must have been quite a scourge. And if we go into the tale of the Sun Temple at Moolasthana, that is Multan, we'll find that even the Muslim invaders for 200 years did not destroy that temple because so many lepers used to come and visit the temple and there was a lot of income through tax. And therefore, you can say this must have been one of the important themes in the medieval times. Then we'll find that Manakavati is nobody else than wife of Ela, who was responsible for the construction of cave number 16, according to this legend. And uh, the monolithic Shiva temples which are there on the top. So there is a continued story from the Agamas. We are going to popular Hinduism. So that particular type of bridge is totally, in a way, neglected by you can say archaeologists, historians, and others because they are not aware of this particular legend and its continued tradition. Next one. These are the various temples which are Laksha Ganapati. For example, I will show you. This is obviously a medieval temple of not earlier than 15th century, but then this has been referred to in the legend. Next one. There is an arti also which goes on and quotes from this Padma Samhita and other Samhitas, wherein Tarakasura was killed by Skanda because of the grace of Ganesha. And that legend is preserved here, and that legend still continues in the Arti, that is the Aratrika, every day, you can say, waving of the lamps, that is recited. Next one. I'm just giving, there is another, you can say, text which we have taken up, and that is the Sahyadri Khanda of the Skanda Purana. This was published in 1877 by Garsada Kuna. But at that time, he thought that Sahyadri was restricted only to the Western Ghats, and therefore he did not include in that the Amali Grama Mahatmya, that is the glory or the greatness of one of the Shakti Pitas, famous Shakti Pitas. There are 3.5 Shakti Pitas the devotees believe in Maharashtra. One is Mahalakshmi, the other is Tulja Bhavani, and the third is Renuka from Mahur. Now, I need not mention that this cult of mother goddesses is so much important and so much, you can say, ingrained in the Maharashtrian, you can say, religious mind that Shivaji, who was a worshipper of Tulja Bhavani, always wore a, a necklace of cowrie shells because he was a devotee. It is connected with actually the Renuka Mahatmya. The Renuka Mahatmya tells us that it was Renuka who was offered by Parashurama this necklace of uh, you can say cowrie shells after killing a demon called Kapardaka. I won't go into the details of saying how a cowrie shell is a symbol of fertility and therefore connected with the mother goddess worship. But it is very much prominent in Maharashtra from this point of view, and therefore the Gondali Nritya is very much connected with that. And it is said in the 11th century text that well, this Gondali Nritya was first of all presented in the court of Someshwara, king of 11th century, the Chalukyan king of 11th century, whose capital is not far off. It is about 40 kilometers from this Mahur, which is there in the Nanded district. And as it was ruled, the Nanded area was ruled by the Chalukyas. Naturally, the Gondali Nritya, which is very much associated with Renuka, is said to be coming from Karnataka Desha. That is how it has been told. But my own studies tell me from the comparative study of the mythology that well, the fort at Mahur has been built by Gonds only. It is after 13th century that Gond became more powerful after the fall of the Yadavas, as also the Kakatiyas of Warangal, and later on the Hoysalas of Karnataka. We'll find that the whole area was known as Gondwan. And the popular mythology, I had a chance to study even that the Gonds have accepted Mahakali as their tutelary deity. And Renuka, which was within their own, you can say, kingdom, was a sister of Mahakali. Her son Jampatanatha or Bhutanatha, he did some mischief or something like that, or with the nymphs who had come to bathe at Chandrapur in the river there. So Mahakali was very angry. So he ran away from her and came to Renuka, who is his mother's sister. So he has come to his Maushi, as we'll call it. And we'll find that the holy circuit which has been described at Renuka Mahatmya, here in Amali Grama Mahatmya, there is one Dakshina Manasa Yatra and Uttara Manasa Yatra. In both these yatras, the yatra will start with the worship of Jampatanatha and end with that only. There is another important deity which has come, and that is Devadeveshwara, that is Vishnu is there. Then Dattatreya, who is incarnation of Vishnu, his place is there, and the comparative study of the literature, whether it is Mahanubhavas and others, it very clearly shows that even before 10th century, the cult of Dattatreya and Renuka had become very important in this area. So when the Gonds were being assimilated and you can say were being Hinduized, we'll find that their mythology and the mythology of the local people, it, I was surprised to see that the mythology of Dattatreya and Renuka, as it is reflected in the in the Sthalapoti, as also the Charitra of Chakradhar Swami, they have completely similar type of wording. So it is not as though it is somebody's figment of imagination of some priest at Mahur that this Sthala Mahatmya was created. All these stories were current. They were simply put to writing in the later medieval because this text quotes from so many texts. Shilpa texts, I have made that study also, and that shows that the iconography as described in so many Shilpa texts coming up to 16th century, that is Prasada Mandana, who was contemporary of Kumbha Rana. So those texts also have been taken into consideration. But the main cult, as we understand from Mahur, is that basically it worships the triad because Brahma has to be there, Vishnu has to be there, and Shiva also has to be there. And curiously enough, like the later, you can say all these Mahatmyas, as it is said in the case of Pandharpur, that first of all, Pandharpur was created by the Lord, and Vaikuntha was created in line with the Pandharpur. So, in order to give the importance of Pandharpur, similarly, in the case of Mahur, it has been told that first of all, Mahur was created and the whole creation was done by Brahma after that. So this way, the three gods are there. Then the mother goddess cult is there, and the Datta cult, which has got a very important role in, you can say, the cultural and religious life of the people. And therefore, we'll find that we have been meticulously studying all the tirthas. There are more than something like 110 tirthas which have been described in the thing. And there are so many images which have been found. There are monuments which are there. And therefore, to reconstruct the history of the whole thing will require not only archaeology, will require study of art history and a proper various versions of this particular, you can say, Amaligrama Mahatmya. So if we study that, then we'll be in a better position to show to the scholars how the cultural and socio-cultural and religious life was expressing itself during different times, before the sultans came and after the sultans came. So we'll find that the whole cultural history of this particular area cannot be complete without the understanding of a text like Skanda Purana. As I had pointed out earlier in the case of Ellora, that unless we understand these popular, you can say, so it is but natural. Scholars say that Hinduism is only Vedic Hinduism. Or Hinduism in the south, they will say it is something like the Agamic Hinduism. But there is something like popular Hinduism, as we can call it, and in that, the new, you can say, tribes and aboriginals, they are being absorbed. So unless we have that complete picture, we won't not only understand the very complex nature of Hinduism, and at the same time, I have tried to link it with urbanization also. It gives us the story from the archaeological point of view, how the urbanization took place. I won't again refer to the work done by Kulke and Sades and others, wherein they have put forth the idea of Hinduized states of Southeast Asia, or the process of Hinduization, or the process which has been described by Srinivas as Sanskritization. All this can be understood with the help of texts and actual study of the monuments which are there. We'll just go through some illustrations and I will finish my talk. We'll go ahead, that's all. Please. These are the various topics which are there. Next. How Parashurama is created. So Parashurama is usually associated with Narmada River. Now he is transferred here because Renuka has come here. And Dere and others say that probably that mother goddess cult, which was probably associated with Lajja Gauri cult, that has assimilated into the Renuka cult. It is a very complex topic because Renuka is connected with Saundatti also, North Karnataka and South Maharashtra. So all these will have to be understood properly, and then only we'll understand the socio-cultural life of Maharashtra. Next one. I have described some of these things, how the triad is connected, and the Saptakroshi Yatra, which has got two components, Dakshina Manasa and Uttara Manasa, meaning one will get the merit of visiting the Manasa, Kailasa, because Kailasa also is identified there. The main mountain at Mahur has been identified with Meru. So when, during the Sultanate period, it was not possible for people to go to the north, they had all those Tirtha Kshetras in Mahur itself. Next one. These are some of the, you can say, scenes, you can say. The Merwada, the lake which you are saying, that is a very sacred lake to Mahanubhavas. This temple is also very sacred to Mahanubhavas as also worshippers of devotees of Datta. Next one. Next one. This is the main, you can say, Renuka Devi temple. This is the inside. It is a very simple shrine of letter. It must have been destroyed from time to time, and therefore, but side entrances are there, and from there you have to enter into it. Next one. This is the Anasuya Mata who is connected with Datta. So all those legends are there, you see. So Anasuya lives here. Atri's ashrama is there. And Datta is Atreya, that is son of Atri. Next one. This is Datta Shikara, where Datta himself had his own ashram besides the ashram of his father. And the legend of the main, you can say, deity, Devadeveshwara, is supposed to be on Datta Shikara. There are so many legends which have come up now. Next one. This is Sarvatirtha, which is supposed to have been created by Parshurama himself by hitting, as we have got that legend regarding Banganga in Mumbai. Similarly, here he, with the help of his Vana, he pierces the earth, and from that comes out a spring, and that is a Sarvatirtha, wherein the funerary rites for his parents are performed. Next one. This is Matrutirtha. There is one Matrutirtha where she emerges from the earth after her death. But look carefully. I'm not going to show you all the images. This image is definitely pre-10th century image. And from that, we can reconstruct that the holy place had started taking shape right in the late Rashtrakuta or Chalukyan times, later Chalukyan times. Next one. So many monuments are identified as constructed of the Yadava period. My friend, Mr. Pathak has studied so many step wells, and there are so many step wells nearby, and those are something like the Sarvatirtha, which I showed you, was something like of the Yadava creation. Next one. Next one. These are the four important places which form the four entry points, as they are called, the Chaturdwaras. Curiously enough, the Kshetra is for Sampoto. The Kshetra is uh, uh, of the Devi. Then the Bahirdwaras are of Shiva. Antardwaras are of Shiva. The Bahirdwaras are of Vishnu. So a triad, as also Mother Goddess cult, is very important here. I think I have finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Hello. Hello. Hello.
So you are audible, sir?
Okay. So,
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Professor Damkhedkar, for this real archaeological, archaeologists' presentation with hard facts, findings, and visiting the archaeological sites and constructing out of those evidences a certain story. Now, the main point of, I may summarize the main points of Professor Zamkhedkar's presentation is that, as I said at the beginning, that these Mahatmyas, for instance, the Shivalaya Mahatmya or Pashupata Mahatmya, and these Skanda Puran and so on. So these texts, they actually describe the socio-cultural and religious life, which has often been misrepresented or misunderstood as just a poetry or some sort of worship, some sort of worship texts and so on and so forth. So this is the main thrust of, as far as I understood, of Professor Zamkhedkar's speech, that these Mahatmyas and the associated with those Mahatmyas, the actual historical and archaeological sites, we have to see both of them in totality, and that actually has to be a main source or can be a main source of understanding the as he says, that pre-popular version of Hinduism, namely the Vedic and Agama part of that. I think I could summarize Professor Zamkhedkar's speech in this way. Now I invite the second speaker, that is Nandita ji from Chennai. And am I seeing Nandita ji somewhere? Yeah, Nandita ji, I'm seeing you. Namaskar. Nandita ji is from Chennai, and she is a historian, environmentalist, and author based in Chennai. She is, of course, PhD in ancient Indian culture, and then she is the director of this CPR Institute in Madras, and she is also DLIT from Vidyasagar University of West Bengal. Her biodata is very large, and I don't think I should read it out right now. It's not necessary. It is available on the Facebook. Now, one of the things that I wanted to stress was that as far as this particular presentation is concerned, she said that Indian history has tended to be a study of dynasties, kings, and invasions, omitting the very important aspect of this is a very important point, not discussed quite often by Indologists, as far as I know. And she said, yet studies have shown that the impact of the environment on the history of India has been tremendous, such as the impact of the climate on the Indus-Saraswati civilization, the evolution of the Vedas from the region of the dying Saraswati to the resource-rich Indo-Gangetic plains, then the forests of India as gleaned from the Ramayana, urbanization in the Mahabharata, and so on and so forth. So, and this growing study of the impact of the environment on historical events and vice versa has led scholars to re-examine Indology. This is the central line of our presentation today, namely that the impact of environment on historical events and vice versa has led scholars to re-examine Indology. So we are looking forward to see how Nandita ji will highlight this re-examining of Indology in relation to these two poles, that is history and environment. So I invite Nandita ji for her presentation. Nandita ji.
Good afternoon, Professor Sharad Deshpande. I'd like to thank you, ICCR, for inviting me to this very important and interesting webinar. I'm going to speak today on integrating the environment into Indian history. And as you said, Indian history as we study it today. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So Indian history as we study it today was written by the British, whose history was a history of kings, dynasties, and invasions. I don't know how to. Yeah. No, I haven't yet gone to the. No, but I'm not yet ready. Sorry. 1 minute. I'll tell you. Yeah. Automatically, the British looked at Indian history with the same vision. However, whereas Britain is a small island with a fairly homogeneous people, maybe a couple of languages, if not very different, India is a subcontinent with several varied impacts on its history. One such impact is that of the environment. The subcontinent is a region of varying geographical regions, from snow-clad mountains to tropical rainforests, from a 7,500 long coastline to dry deserts. As the Indian plate keeps pushing into the Eurasian plate, it has resulted in regular earthquakes, while the uneven rainfall brings rains and floods, cyclones and droughts, and many other natural disasters. These have been beautifully described as the 5 Tinays, or geographical landscapes, in the 3rd century BCE Tamil Tolkappiyam, the Kurinji or mountains, Pale or desert, Mulle or pastoral tracts, Marudam or agricultural lands, and Neital or coastline, each with its own inhabitants, occupations, flora, fauna, and deities. Obviously, ancient Indians were aware of the different parts of India, since there are no deserts in the south or coastlines in the north. And this belies the British claim to have created India. They always say that there was no India before Britain came here. I think long before that, we have the Aindatile, which are the oldest probable reference. And of course, we have later people like Adi Shankara who fixed the 4 points of India. The great changes to the environment through expanding agriculture, intensive farming, deforestation, decimation of wildlife, and so on, had a major impact on the people and on historical events. It is therefore essential to re-examine Indology from the perspective of the integration of the decimation and gradual desertification of the land, leading to the impoverishment of the people. And where do we find this information? It is then the wealth of our literature, our archaeology, our epigraphs, and so on, about the dependence of human beings on nature and their duties towards plants and sentient beings. Much of ancient memory has been designated as myths by Western scholars. But let's not forget that mythology has been described as the science of primitive man, his manner of explaining the universe. I would like to give one example. The Wular Lake in Kashmir is said to have been converted by the Naga, Mahapadma Naga, who is believed to still live inside the lake, from the town of Chandrapur. Now, historians and geologists have discovered that a massive earthquake during the reign of King Sundarasena in the 9th century, no, not in the, much earlier, sorry, in the reign of King Sundarasena, submerged Chandrapur and the king and its inhabitants, creating the lake. So the mythology is not wrong, it's absolutely right, the so-called mythology. The town of Shopur, we keep hearing Sopor in the news every other day, was actually Suyapura. There was a massive earthquake in the 9th century in 883 CE, and a local engineer called Surya restored the flow of the river after this massive earthquake. So it is named after that. So all these went, but they continue, they actually happen. Now I'd like to start my please confirm that you can see the presentation.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. This has disappeared. Yeah. Okay, human history, human beings depend on complex natural processes derived from the sun. Oops, what happened?
Yes, it is there.
Actually, 1 minute, something went wrong. Yeah, okay. Huh? Okay, if you go big, there are problems. Okay. Depend on complex natural processes derived from the sun, air, water, and land. Geological formations like land formations, volcanoes, and volcanic ash, climatic forces like rainfall, temperature, floods, and droughts, geophysical processes like earthquakes, cyclones, and so on, astronomical factors, all affect life on Earth. The interaction between all these factors and the various life forms, the struggle for survival and domination, and the collapse of human societies with the breakdown of ecosystems is ecological history. The changeover from the easier life of the hunter-gatherer to the more difficult work of the farmer was probably the result of a growing population. Okay, fine, thank you. Now, only humans have the ability and have spread into every ecosystem through technology They have dominated ecosystems, extracted food, shelter, clothing, energy, and material goods. Only humans also have the capacity and the capability to endanger and destroy ecosystems. When human societies have extracted more than the ecosystem can give, the environment collapses and it can no longer sustain life. Over a period of time, excess populations formed new groups and exploited new areas. The requirement of land and food resulted in intensive agriculture, the clash of civilizations, wars between societies, and the domination of technically advanced societies over the less advanced, who were used as slaves. In settled agrarian communities, the ownership of food passed from communal sharing to individuals, to the state, and to institutions, such as temples and so on, who collected, stored, and distributed or sold the food. This was to result in the emergence of stratified societies, with a ruling military and religious hierarchy, a large population of farmers and craftspeople, and the slaves who were the conquered hunter-gatherers. So there are 4 historical modes of resource use. Food gathering, which includes shifting cultivation, nomadic pastoralism, settled cultivation for food production, and industries. So let's see what is the impact. The environmental impact of food gathering, including shifting cultivation, was very low. People hunted or collected only what they needed because there was no way to store, to grow, and so on. But with nomadic pastoralism, things changed. It had a very big environmental impact. Animals were domesticated and taken from one place to another when the pasture, the grass, got over in the place they lived in. This led to land degradations. The invasions of North India were an unfortunate fallout, a result of the nomadic pastoralism in the Northwest, in Afghanistan, Persia, and Central Asia. Settled agriculture, settled cultivation or agriculture has a very strong environmental impact. Forests are converted to cropland. Intensive farming upsets the food chain. There are changes in the landscape, extermination of some species and introduction of new species. Soil quality is destroyed and rendered infertile over time. There is an intensive consumption of energy. Again, what happens? Abandonment of that settlement, migration, and conquest of new lands. Agriculture is essential for human survival. But agriculture is also the cause of the collapse of societies. As indigenous forests are cleared for intensive farming, as biodiversity gives way to fields of grain, the natural balances are destroyed and the soil is exposed to wind, rain, and erosion. Intensive irrigation alters water levels and mineral content in the land. It causes waterlogging, salinity, and finally, it makes agriculture impossible. As forests are destroyed for housing, timber, fuel, wood, and everything else, the deforested land loses its fertile topsoil. By 6000 BCE, soil erosion caused by deforestation and declining crop yields resulted in the abandonment of villages in central Jordan. In 1700 BCE, waterlogging and surface salinity prevented the growth of wheat in Mesopotamia, and gradually that society degraded and disappeared. Industry and urbanization has the most powerful environmental impact. Industries require people to live together, and these become urban conglomerations, towns and cities which are disconnected from villages and forests. There are enormous demands on resources and production of waste. Food has to be produced in excess. Now, it's not produced by these people themselves who are running the industry. It has to be produced outside the urban area by farmers in order to feed the cities. In time, the cities become unsustainable. leading again to abandonment, migration, and conquest of new land. So this is why there has always been so much disturbance in the world, and people have constantly been trying to find new places to get their goods and especially their food. If people change the environment, so did the environment change the lives of entire communities. Climatic changes affected by changing winds, changing land-water contrast, and most important, the effect of the oceans, which provide the source of all precipitation, also affected the course of history. In our own time, we have seen the results of El Nino, and a failed monsoon or a wet, cold period could reduce the harvest, the vegetation of an area, and change lifestyles. This is the story of what happened to the ancient cities of Egypt, of Mesopotamia, Persia, which could not self-sustain, and the abandonment of the cities of the Indus-Saraswati region. Now let's come specifically to India. How did the environment affect human history and vice versa in India? Frequent earthquakes along the Himalayas, where the Indian landmass meets the Asian continent, caused the disappearance of the river Ghagra Hakra, which was possibly the mighty river Saraswati. I call it mighty river because that's what the Veda says. So if the Veda says that it was mighty, it was mighty. And it led to the desertification of Cholistan and Thar. Because in the Mahabharata, there is an instance where Balrama tells Krishna, while Krishna goes off to the war, to Kurukshetra, he says he will go on a pilgrimage to see where the Saraswati disappears into the desert. So by the period of the Mahabharata, the Saraswati had disappeared. So I believe that these are all actual happenings which happened at that time. You can't imagine these things. The best example of how the environment has changed Indian civilization is the disappearance of the Harappan civilization. A massive tectonic event around 2900 BCE sent this river underground. Now, over 80% of the Harappan cities are situated along the Ghagar Hakra, which is now underground, and the gradual disappearance of this water source would have spelled doom for the urban settlements. Now, the Indus seals show that tropical animals like the elephant, tiger, rhinoceros, and water buffalo, which have thick forests, swamps, and so on. And that area could not have been a desert at the time of the Indus civilization. So what happened? Climate change also caused the unsustainability of Harappan cities. This is a result of a lot of research which has been done in recent times. And people moved to the east and to the south. The Harappan civilization goes as far south as Maharashtra. Gujarat, Maharashtra, we find a lot of Harappan cities over there. So this is what happened. They gradually moved out. But what was the result of this? The Western Front was left open to invaders. Successive waves of invaders came into the subcontinent. These were people who had destroyed their own ecology because many of them have been already living in great cities from an ancient time, and they had been forced to shift from settled agriculture to nomadic grazing. As the Punjab and Sindh remained unfortified, lacking the natural resources to feed an army, the Western Front was left without strong armies to protect it. And don't forget, this Thar desert goes to the gates of Delhi. So when Delhi was the capital, it was easily captured. Now, the Afghans, Persian, and Mongols were pastoralists who needed grazing land for their goats. They were primarily meat eaters and they grazed their goats. The rugged terrain in their own countries made them into good warriors. But they required land to grow food and to grow grass for their goats. So they conquered land in India and settled over here. Now, why was the Northwest conquered so easily? Because it has a very poor natural resource base. When I say Northwest India, I mean Pakistan, okay? I don't use the term South Asia as Professor Bakchi mentioned yesterday. I call Northwest Pakistan as Northwest India because when we talk about the environment, you cannot take political lines. You have to take a whole region together. It has a poor natural resource base, in spite of the existence of the Indus, which itself is a very tacky river because it keeps changing changing direction and moves away from time to time, causing a lot of destruction. There are no minerals to aid industry. There's always been insufficient food production to maintain standing armies. So this devastation left the land too weak to protect itself. There were frequent earthquakes and frequent earthquakes. One example is that in the 16th century, a devastating earthquake really destroyed the land and the people. And when Babur wanted to come in, it was very easy for him to occupy Kabul and march straight to Delhi. You know, we read so-and-so came and marched to Delhi and there was nobody to stop him all along the way. That's not natural. There should have been kings and armies and kingdoms to stop them. But that's because of the constant earthquakes, frequent earthquakes that the land that is now Pakistan has been having. Whereas powerful kingdoms in the east and the south had food and natural resources and were not easily conquered. Now take Pataliputra. The Pataliputra had the natural resources. It had extensive land, water and minerals. It could make iron and manufacture weapons and so on. So it was a very convenient capital to govern an empire. It is only after the capital moved to Delhi, that is Indraprastha, that the problems began. Just as I mentioned Delhi, between the 16th and 17th centuries in Western India, especially in and around Surat, the land was devastated by drought and plague. The region became the battleground for the Mughal-Maratha wars, particularly the encounters between Shivaji and Aurangzeb's army. So this is why places are conquered so easily. There are many, many more examples of environmental events changing the course of history. Dr. S.R. Rao followed the Mahabharata and took a team to discover ancient Dwaraka, which had gone under water after a massive flood. Now, Tamil Nadu has been witness to many major deluges that have totally changed the history. Madurai, the capital of the Pandyas, and I have done a paper and done a lot of research to show that these people were probably the Pandavas, the descendants of the Pandavas who moved south and rebuilt the Mathura of the north in Madura. If you write Mathura in Tamil, it becomes Madura. So it's a far longer history, but this is the place where the first Sangam was held and it was submerged. Then another city was founded called Kapadapuram on the east coast, which was also submerged. So the literary output of the first two Sangams was totally lost and never retrieved. Finally, the capital was shifted inland to Madurai along with the coastal goddess Meenakshi. And the twin epics Shilapadigaram and Manimekale, the twin Tamil epics, refer to the changes in sea levels during this period. In fact, the coastal belt stretching from Vishakhapatnam to Nagapatnam is still subject to regular cyclones. Mamallapuram, Mahabalipuram, the port city of the Pallavas, was partially submerged. During the Pallava period, the ships entered the Pallava port at Mahabalipuram on the river Palar and could cruise all the way up to Kanchipuram. Now the river Palar has changed course and enters the sea 100 kilometers south of Mamallapuram. It has also silted up. There's no water and it is no longer navigable. So this is how that entire region has just become a tourist site and nothing else is happening there. The greatest calamity befell the famous port town of Pumpuhar, extolled in literature and by Western visitors who came there, including Marco Polo. One of the great nagarams or cities, it disappeared without a trace after a cyclone. Some people say tidal wave. We don't know. It was left to archaeologists and underwater divers to retrieve the artifacts and discover the underwater city in this century. Now, it's not just past history, even in recent times. For example, take the Franco-British Wars. Two major cyclones in 729 and 1746 caused the total destruction of the French fleet of de la Bourdonnais. The vessels were submerged and four were stranded on the beach at Madras. This turned the tide of the Franco-British Wars in the East India Company's favor. In more recent times, Dhanushkodi, I think many of you would have known about this, which is situated on Rameshwaram Island. It was a major tourist and pilgrimage center, and the coast of Sri Lanka is just 31 kilometers away, and there were regular ferry services between Dhanushkodi and Talamannar in Sri Lanka, and a flourishing trade took place. However, everything was submerged and destroyed by the terrible cyclone of 1964. Today it is a ghost town. But that is not the only thing. This town was an important transit point and the easy place of interaction of Tamils between northern Sri Lanka and South India. But this came to an end. And today, both these groups are fighting over marine resources. They continue till today. If you come to Chennai, every day's newspaper will tell you about how many people the Sri Lankan Navy took away, how many fishermen and so on. On the other hand, Chidambaram survived because its Thalavriksha or sacred plant was protected. It was the mangrove called Thillai. In fact, the other name for Chidambaram is Thillai. And this formed a natural breakwater when cyclones hit the east coast. So I'm just showing you how all the other places which were destroyed by the environment, which destroyed their environment, were destroyed themselves, whereas Chidambaram, which protected its mangroves, survived. So how did people in the Indian continent influence environmental change? Now, the Vedic period was an idyllic, eco-friendly society where conservation of forests and nature was of primary importance. This is essential. I have written a book called Hinduism and Nature. Frankly, the Rig Veda was the major source for my book because it tells you exactly what are your duties towards nature. One needn't go very far. In the Ramayana, you see the growth of settlements in forests. The forest was still greatly expected. You have Shantivana, Mahavana, different types of ones. But you also find expansion into the forest and conflicts between the new settlers and food-gathering tribes who lived there, with a gradual marginalization of forest dwellers. But the big change came in the time of the Mahabharata. The burning of the Khandwa forest to build Indraprastha, or modern Delhi, was a catastrophic event, killing people and wildlife by the thousands and uprooting entire tribes from the region. This was the beginning of a period of expanding urbanization, with wars over land and resources. And nearly every North Indian kingdom took part in the Kurukshetra war. What were the Kauravas and Pandavas fighting over? They were fighting over land. And Krishna's migration to Dwarka with the Yadavas was probably because of shortage of land, because the numbers of people, there was an increase in human numbers and shortage of land. The Arthashastra is probably the most amazing book that was ever written. It's the first treatise in the world which included state policy towards forest conservation and wildlife protection. This wonderful book lists various types of forests: forests for resource extraction, forests for the king's hunting pleasure, sanctuaries for elephants or Hastivana, sanctuaries for predators or Vyalavana, and so on. These principles were followed till the beginning of the Delhi Sultanate, and then things changed. What happened? In the medieval period, we find that there was overgrazing to feed the growing meat requirements in the Islamic period. Forest lands were parceled out to feudatories who had to provide money and standing armies for the rulers. Forest land was also diverted for goat and cattle rearing. People had to grow more, and agricultural land was taxed heavily. The land became infertile, and frequent wars and dynastic changes became the rule in North India. So the medieval period, which was full of battles and wars and kings and dynasties changing, is directly related to the environment and what was happening. Now, of course, I have to jump through, the limitations of time means I have to jump through a lot of periods. And we come to the colonial period, where farmers who had been really overtaxed by despotic, greedy rulers and zamindars were happy to welcome the European colonizers as deliverers. But what did the British do? They undertook massive deforestation and resource removal to feed industries in Britain and to build the railways. Deodar, sal, and teak were used for the railways. It was replaced by pine and other coniferous trees, which were not conducive for the Indian environment. But they were replaced by these trees, which were good for the paper industry and viscose industry. And the problem also happened that these trees have a lot of pine and cone. They have a lot of sharp, I don't know what you call it, sharp points coming out. And birds could no longer nest over there. Now, we do not realize what is the importance of bird dung, because when birds fertilize a place, when birds fertilize a place, and that's probably the best kind of fertilizer, much better than anything else. So the control of natural resources, water, forests, and land was taken over by the government. An unparalleled environmental devastation was caused by the British to increase revenue. Forests were converted to agricultural land. Wildlife was killed recklessly. The cheetah went into total extinction. There was a price of 25 rupees for every predator killed. The lion nearly disappeared. The tiger, just a few thousand were left, and so on. Just to give you an example, Chennai, where I live, was once called Tiger Town, Puliyur, a region of thick forests, wildlife, and 250 water bodies. After leasing Fort St. George on Madras Patnam Beach, the British cut every tree and killed all wildlife in order to see the French army creep up on them. Garbage was dumped in lakes and tanks. Today, there are only 4 water bodies and 50 tanks. And Chennai swings from floods, where the water has no place to go, to droughts, with a perennial water problem. Famines in colonial India in the 18th century, Hyder Ali laid waste to the region around Madras, and the consequent loss of manpower resulted in the slowdown of agriculture and a devastating famine. So that's how the British annexed the entire Madras region. This happened all over the country. Famines in the British period. Of course, the famous opium wars were there when farmers were forced to stop growing grain and to grow opium for sale to China. This led to massive famines and the transportation of indentured labor all over the world. This also led to the opium wars. So I'm just showing you how all these activities, human activities, which are not conducive for good environment, went on, caused wars, and something happened in India, caused wars in China, and continues till today because Hong Kong is still a problem between the British and China. And in this, the freedom movement was born. The excessive taxation led to excessive food production and soil infertility. Infertility meant the production slowed down, and this led to famines and unrest and the birth of the freedom movement. So, human history is linked to the environment. When societies are weak, others seize the opportunity. The study of history in relation to environmental events fills gaps in our knowledge. We cannot stop natural disasters and calamities, but we can prevent human activities that lead to resource misuse and climate change. We are going through that right now. Everything we are doing is leading to resource loss and climate change. I'd like to end by thanking all of you for giving me this opportunity. Environmental history is a very important subject, and I'm also happy to say that the ICHR, Indian Council of Historical Research, sorry, lost. Sorry, something's gone wrong. Stop sharing. Okay, that the Indian Council of Historical Research has embarked on a multi-volume environmental history of India, of which the first volume is out. However, it's important that the impact of human activity on the environment and vice versa should enter the textbooks of our schools and colleges and taken up by research scholars, because then it will explain several inexplicable events in Indian history. Thank you. Namaskar and Jai Hind.
Well, thank you, Nandita ji, for your presentation. And indeed, you have covered a lot, I mean, a very big canvas at the beginning of the impact of environment on human history in general. Later on, you actually turned to this Indian subcontinent, and then you have pointed out how how history of this subcontinent has been impacted by environmental changes and environmental ruptures and the disappearance of, for instance, Saraswati River, leading to the disappearance of Harappan civilization. Then why this Western front was left open to invaders, and why was it so vulnerable to the Western, I mean, the invaders like Afghans and Mughals? And you have pointed out that this northwest region was a scarcity resource region, and therefore it wasn't. I mean, it became vulnerable as compared to the southern states of India, which were resource rich, so to say. Then you talked about the submerged cities like Dwarka, Madurai, etc. And then you then shifted to the modern times, namely the colonial period, the British exploitation, then famines, and so on and so forth. In general, you have covered a vast, I should say, a vast area of environmental changes, partly man-made. Famine, for example, can have both these components: the nature as well as the man. So you have covered all these aspects of environment impacting the history of Indian subcontinent. But by history, what you seem to have understood are the populations. But when we talk about histories, we talk about history of, say, of the dynasties, histories of people, and so on and so forth. So at one level, you have given a different meaning of history in your presentation, that is history of populations. I mean, all these climatic changes and environmental impacts are on human populations per se. So that was my observation, and I think with that observation, I would like to conclude my conclusion part of your lecture. And I am grateful to you. Today, I am also I should also thank to Professor Arvind Zamkhedkar and yourself, your good self, for giving for drawing our attention to archaeological come literary resources for understanding socio-cultural and religious life, as was presented by Professor Zamkhedkar, and seeing the relationship between environment and Indian history, or rather Indian population, which is a different dimension in the study of Indology. And at the end, as you have mentioned, that ICHR is compiling a volume of the environmental history of India, which I suppose must be a very great project. And it will be also very useful for the Indological studies. So with these words, I think I should conclude today's session. If there are any questions, I would like to invite questions, which will be. So, are there any questions visible here? I don't see any question. Webmaster.
No, sir, we cannot see a question. However, Deepak Kanal sir has given one observation of his, which you can read, sir.
Yeah,
If
yes,
you want.
sure.
Should I?
Sure.
I'm sorry, she has already spoken about it. So that's why I have supplemented my comment by saying sorry that I was too.
I did. I could not hear what Deepak is saying. I could not hear.
You can't?
I could not.
What about the other people?
No, we could not hear.
None of you?
No,
Nobody could hear me?
No, the voice was breaking. The voice was breaking.
Okay. Is it? Then I must use the earphones tomorrow.
Yes. You can
Is it
put
still
your.
breaking?
You can. Hello.
Yes, I should. Tomorrow I'll put my earphones.
Okay. You can put your thing in the chat box right now. If what you wanted to say.
Yes, I may. I said it.
No. Not audible.
I'm writing it.
Okay. Acha, Jaideep, do you want to say? Do you have something to say? I would like to hear something from Jaideep.
No comment as such, but Vishwa had given a paper on the burning of the Khandava forest at a conference that was organized in the Indira Gandhi Center in Delhi, IGNCA. And I think the video of that might be online somewhere, maybe on YouTube. I think it was an IGNCA or Indic Academy conference. Or maybe it was the Mahabharata Manthan, but hopefully that paper will be published. If someone is doing a volume on Mahabharata and environment, then maybe that paper can be published. And we will see Professor Jankhetkar. We were supposed to see him this year at World Sanskrit Conference, but it's now been postponed by a year. So we shall see each other next year in Australia.
So, okay. So, what is have no? But see, I mean, this is a different dimension for understand. I mean, this is a new topic which Indologists can engage with environment and human history, but. Our general understanding of history is that it is the history of humans interacting with one another. That is the point. Now, how that is affected by environment is a very important point. But this needs to be a lot of subtle observations that whether environment impacts the emotions, whether the environment impacts the lifestyle, the environment impacts the attitudes, and so on and so forth. Then this connect between environment and human history will be fruitful. Otherwise, what I say is that, as I said, it's the impact of environment on human population. That is one thing. But when we talk about human population, it's not necessarily that we talk about human history as such. So this is the point I want to make. So how do you react to that? Or how would you react to that?
Professor Jankhetkar is raising his hand.
Yeah. Yes.
See, I think I look at it like this, that earlier this type of awareness was expressed in terms of geographical factors in history. So there is something like a school which thinks that the geographical factors have to be taken into consideration. And Professor Sankaraya, for example, who worked in London University, its guide was one of the persons who was the representative of that school. Coming to Maratha history, Shezwalkar was one of the persons who emphasized the role of geographical factors. Recently, Professor Chakravarti, retired professor from Cambridge, he has written a book on geographical factors. What Dr. Nandita has raised is a very important issue. It is a broader issue of environment. And that is also being looked into by archaeologists, at least for the prehistoric or even you can say the historical period. Professor M.K. Dhavekar has written a complete book on the role of environment in, you can say, Indian history. And in that, of course, the major portion, he has these two other books, that is, you can say, Prehistoric India and Historical Archaeology in India. In that, he has gone into detail regarding how environment, first of all, was understood from the archaeological point of view, because there were excavations which were conducted in Rajasthan, and with the help of research on palynology, with the help of palynological research, there were certain periods which were said to be, meaning earlier it was expressed in terms of, you can say, the ice ages and the interglacial ages. That was the prehistoric part. But later on, now, for example, there is a complete theory that why, in a way, people came to the Neolithic period. And Professor Padaya will be a better person to say on that. He says that in the Mesolithic period, because of the good environment, there was something like a population explosion. And to feed the needs of that particular thing, the Neolithic Revolution came in. That is how sometimes interpretations are given on the basis of environment. Professor Dhavekar, coming to the historical, of course, it is a good debate, and she has explained very well, summarized the whole thing very well. How, when people were discussing about the end of the Harappan civilization, it was said that, well, it must have been some overuse of you can say, bricks which were burnt and overuse of, you can say, fuel, that is deforestation, because of which it happened. That's how earlier it was explained. But as rightly pointed out by Nandita Krishna, that there were some tectonic changes which are happening, and the whole Saraswati River dried out. And that must have had an impact. And as Professor Dawikar says, that during this particular period, all over the world, the environment had become bad. There were no rains at all, and therefore the civilization disintegrated. Only exception was probably Persia, wherein the Persian civilization continued. We had a complete break from 1800 BC to roughly 1200 BC. Then coming to the historical period, Professor Dawikar says that, well, he does not call it feudalism. He says that it is because of the environment that the de-urbanization process started. My own friend, Professor Bandar Naike, he thinks it altogether in a different way. He says that we have to think about the uh, Indian subcontinent from a different angle. We are something like monsoon Asia. So there should be something like a monsoon Asia archaeology. And he says that there must have been at least not three urbanizations as we think. That is, the first urbanization was the Indus, the second was the Gangetic, and the third was, you can say, in the times of, sometimes it is argued by uh, uh, by some of the medieval historians that it was the Mughal period which was the urbanization or something like that. But he goes beyond that and he says that there are at least 5 or 6 urbanizations. Otherwise, how do you explain the prosperity of Vijayanagar coming altogether in altogether different way? And therefore, he says that it was because of the changes in the environment that there were at least 6 periods of urbanization, or you can say re-urbanization. So I think she has given a very good. I should thank her for taking a very good review of the whole thing and putting us in nutshell. And I yet to correct your understanding a bit. It is not one volume. It is about 7 volumes which are going to come up, and first volume is already published. And one of the important persons associated with that volume was Dr. Nandita herself. Thank you.
Some noise is there.
No, no.
Some telephone noise is there. Acha, I must say one thing, that when I saw that there are no questions coming up from the viewers, I thought I should play either a devil's eye, or I should play Socrates, pretending to be ignorant, and then ask such a question which will generate a good discussion, bringing out the strength and the base points of this presentation. So Nandita ji, I am looking forward to your reply to my question, and that should be the I should say that should be the concluding point. Can I?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Professor Janketkar put it very well, but I shall add to what he said. You say it's just people. No, it's not people that go from here to. When I say that they were conquered and a new civilization comes up, they are dynasties, they are kings. You have the Sultanate had so many, Khilji, Tughlaq, so on. So these are various dynasties. It is absolutely historical. And whatever happened was again a historical event influenced or influencing the environment. So we are not going outside the realm of history at all. As I said, the Vedic period was an idyllic period. But after that, we start seeing the change and we see periods of great urbanization. And that has been a big detriment. Now, urbanization is not just a bunch of people getting together and saying, okay, let's start corridors and so on. There is a king, there is, like, for example, Pataliputra. It is the best example of how beautifully the city was managed, was administered, probably by Kautilya's suggestions and so on. But then you had all these various groups of artisans who moved in there with their families. So all this is planned, and this was done by the administration of the king. So it is not divorced from history at all. It is a part of history. People follow their kings. Kings are created by their people. So we cannot leave out the dynastic aspect at all in history. It is there. But I'm saying the dynasties are also accidentally, because why would a dynasty go and try and conquer a nice desert in Ladakh or something that was left fairly untouched? Because it's a nice desert, nobody wants it. There you have a continuity of people who live there.
Right.
Small past population, whereas the Indian hinterland is resource rich, and everybody wants the same resources, the same fertility. They want to grow grains and graze their cattle and so on.
Okay, that's no. I didn't mean that you are left. You have left out history understood in one sense of the term. But I just, as I said, I wanted
I'm
to
a
get.
historian.
Yes, I know. I know that.
I'm a historian.
I know
never
that.
leave out history.
Okay then. So shall we? Where is Vediji there? Shall we call it a day? Vediji.
Namaskar. Thank you. So I'm there, and I would like to share that today also there was a good response to this webinar on the social media platform, YouTube and Facebook channels of ICCR. So many people all over the world are, witnessing this unique event of, presentations by such an eminent scholars today. So we will be bringing out an e-publication on the deliberations that took place in this webinar. And I would like to request that these presentations, if these can be provided to us, so we can give Dr. Deshpande the basic draft. And then this e-booklet can be finalized. And immediately after this webinar is over, after a few days, we can put this also on the website. And
e-book. Okay. Yeah, it's a good suggestion.
On the proceedings of the webinar, so whatever has been discussed, like yesterday's presentation by Dr. Bagchi, so all the papers and presentations should be properly inserted into this e-booklet, and which can be vetted and edited by all of you, and then we can just put it on the website of ICCR for the benefit of people all over the world. And with this, I just thank you everyone for today's session, and we will look forward to meeting you all again tomorrow. Thank you.
Tomorrow at 3. Thank you. Namaste. 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 Namaste, Jaydeep. Namaste, Nandita ji. Okay, bye. Bye.